Like a thunderbolt hitting his ears, the judge sentenced David to life in prison for killing his own grandfather to take over the family's abandoned mine. His heart stopped, as if a heavy stone was pressing down on his chest from the accusatory whispers around him. But it was much more painful when he imagined that after today his dog would become a stray if no one agreed to adopt him. A desperate plea that was almost inaudible. He only wanted one last thing: to let me see Rocky. His loyal dog. He raised him from a young age until David joined the army to serve his country. From then on, Rocky was by his grandfather's side until his grandfather's murder. He begged the judge with a pleading look, and contrary to all expectations, the request was granted by the judge. Just then, the large wooden doors at the back of the courtroom opened with a resounding creak, gasps rising from the onlookers as Rocky burst in. David's eyes widened, and he nearly fell off his chair, waiting for his dog, Rocky, to jerk his leash, ignoring all the eyes in the room, focusing only on charging towards David. David knelt down as far as he could, burying his face in Rocky's fur. The world around him darkened, and for the first time in days, he felt a strange sense of hope. "I'm so sorry, man," David whispered, hot tears falling onto Rocky's silky fur, his previously restrained expression melting into anguish. "Oh my God," someone in the audience whispered, unable to contain their emotions as they witnessed the reunion. Rocky whimpered softly, then lifted his muzzle to David's face, licking away the tears. The reunion was so emotional that even Judge Hughes, a woman of steel, quickly wiped away a tear before anyone saw it. At that moment, something unexpected happened. Rocky started barking unusually persistently, breaking the human atmosphere in the courtroom, almost as if he was trying to speak in his own way. He pawed at David's coat pocket, his nose furiously sniffing. David looked confused, then reached into the pocket to find something he had not noticed before: a folded piece of paper, and, tucked within the creases, a very tiny memory card. How it ended up there, he had no idea. Immediately, David's lawyer, Sophie, who was waiting at the defense table, rushed in and snatched the paper from David's hand. She gently opened the entire paper. Everyone around only saw the look of surprise as she carefully read the content on it. She immediately turned to face the judge. "Your Honor, I would like to pause the trial for a moment. This paper could be important evidence that could directly affect my client's innocence." The entire courtroom held its breath, transfixed by the revelation. Judge Hughes looked skeptical, but recognized the potential importance of this finding. "Let me examine it," she said. The bailiff handed over the newly discovered evidence. After a moment of scanning the text, she frowned with curiosity. "Given the nature of what I'm reading, I'm inclined to permit a short break so that you may authenticate this information. Court is adjourned for now." A collective gasp swept the gallery. David exhaled a shaky breath, relief washing over him. But the reprieve was only temporary. As the judge's gavel echoed, the onlookers erupted with chatter. Many craned their necks to see what had been written on that mysterious sheet of paper. Photographers angled themselves to capture David's reaction. Several journalists jostled each other to get a better vantage point. Judge Hughes stood from her bench. "We will reconvene once the authenticity of this document and the memory card is verified." She turned to the bailiff. "Take the defendant back into custody and impose stricter measures to ensure no tampering occurs. I want this matter handled with absolute care." David felt the cold grip of handcuffs on his wrists once more, pulling him away from Rocky. The German shepherd whined and strained at the leash, ears flat in distress. Yet, as David was escorted out, there was a moment of unspoken connection between man and dog, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. Locked in a solitary holding cell, David couldn't shake the heaviness in his heart. As he paced the cold concrete floor, the questions swirled. Who had slipped that note and tiny memory card into his coat? Why had Rocky sensed it? And was this enough to clear him of the charge of murder? He sank onto the metal bench, running his hands through his hair. Memories flooded back. The day he enlisted in the military 4 years ago, the tearful farewell with his grandfather Logan, and how Rocky had tried to jump into the car with him. He recalled how Logan reassured him that the dog would be in safe hands. For 4 long years, David had thought about reuniting with Rocky. Upon his discharge just 3 weeks earlier, he rushed straight home. The moment he opened the gate, Rocky barreled into him with so much force it nearly knocked him off his feet. It felt as if no time had separated them. And now, that loyal companion had appeared in court, discovering a piece of evidence David himself hadn't noticed. He could feel his eyes stinging again, a mixture of gratitude and despair. The cell door buzzed open, revealing the guard. "It's time, Wilcox. Your lawyer wants to speak with you." David was led to a small interview room where Sophie was waiting, laptop open. She wore a focused expression that teetered between hope and concern. "I managed to access the memory card," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "There's an audio file on it. The recording is of a man threatening your grandfather, Logan. He's saying he'll kill him if he doesn't sell the old mine. This indicates a clear motive for someone else to harm your grandfather. Someone who desperately wanted that property, not you." David's eyes widened. "So, someone framed me? This means I'm not crazy. I didn't hurt Grandpa." Sophie gave him a reassuring nod. "All the details suggest you're merely a pawn. There's a high chance whoever this voice belongs to orchestrated everything. I'm still piecing it together, but it's definitely enough to raise serious questions about the prosecution's theory." David clenched his fists, anger flaring at the thought of someone killing Logan for a worthless old mine. He had always believed that the mine, long inactive, held no particular value, except perhaps a sentimental one, cherished by Logan alone. Driven by the newly discovered evidence, Sophie and Rocky made their way to the old mine. It sat amid desolate rocky terrain outside the city, largely overlooked for years. Rusting machinery dotted the landscape, while dilapidated shacks hinted at once thriving operations. Sophie held Rocky's leash loosely as they entered the mine, which still felt damp from underground water trickling through the walls. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the darkness became. Dust swirled in the beam of Sophie's flashlight. She doubted anyone would have reason to come down here, but she also recalled the threat on the audio file. Someone wanted this place badly, or at least wanted to keep it under their control. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rattled the mine, its sound amplified by the cavernous tunnels. Loose soil and rocks cascaded from the ceiling. Sophie's heart pounded as panic rose. Rocky barked, the echo magnifying his bark into a cacophony of alarm. Sophie dropped to her knees and covered her head, choking on swirling dust. When the trembling subsided, Sophie scrambled up an incline of rubble, adrenaline coursing through her body. She could see through a narrow gap in the collapsed entrance that, some distance away, a group of men were testing some form of heavy weaponry. The bright flash of muzzle fire lit the sky. Sophie's fear turned to grim determination. This was likely an illegal arms deal or weapons test. Perhaps the old mine was being used as a secret storage or exchange point. This revelation could be pivotal in proving David's innocence. She walked to the car with Rocky and left. It was quite dangerous to continue going into the tunnel at this time. "Maybe we could come back another time," she said while placing her hand on Rocky's soft fur. Meanwhile, back in his cell, David received an unexpected visitor, a man in a dark suit with a face partially concealed by the brim of his hat. "You don't know me," the man said quietly, "but you need to understand that you're a scapegoat in a larger scheme. The real puppet master is Draven Gamble, a local power broker and a dangerous man. He'll do anything to protect his interests, and that includes silencing anyone who stands in his way." David tensed. "If that's true, why are you telling me this? Because Draven is about to make his next move. And if you want to clear your name, you need to be ready. Don't trust anyone who claims this was all about that worthless mine." Before David could reply, the man slipped away as silently as he had arrived. David stared at the cold metal door. His mind reeled with the newly revealed name, Draven Gamble. Sophie came to the cell. She asked David, "Do you know the people testing weapons near the mine?" "I don't know. Before joining the army, this mine was very deserted," David replied. Then he told Sophie, "A strange man came to the cell and revealed a name. Draven Gamble. You help me investigate who he is." The conversation ended. Sophie left when it was already dark. The next morning, Sophie, more determined than ever, returned to the mine with Rocky. The dog seemed keen to sniff out hidden passageways, or maybe it was just his acute sense of smell picking up something unusual in the stale air. Sure enough, Rocky led Sophie into a side tunnel they hadn't noticed before. The entrance was partially concealed behind rotten wooden boards. Sophie's flashlight revealed a small room, easily missed in the darkness. Inside, she discovered stacked crates that bore no official markings. She pried one open, her breath catching as she uncovered rifles and boxes of ammunition. Most of them had foreign markings. They were definitely contraband. "Gamble's stash," Sophie muttered, pressing her phone's camera to record the scene. This is how they leverage power. Illegal arms, hidden in an abandoned mine. If Logan found out about this, it explains why he was threatened. Rocky let out a low growl, as if sensing danger. Sophie quickly finished filming, securing digital evidence of what might tie everything back to the conspirator behind Logan's murder. Back at the detention center, David couldn't sleep. The worry for Rocky gnawed at him. He couldn't bear the thought of something happening to Rocky, especially when he was locked up and unable to protect his friend himself. Desperate, he asked Sophie to arrange for a trusted animal protection agency to ensure Rocky's safety if things became too risky. Though it pained him to think of Rocky far away, David's top priority was the dog's life. "Promise me you'll keep him out of harm's way," he pleaded, voice trembling. Sophie placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Rocky is safe for now, David, but I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he stays that way." That afternoon, as Sophie walked around the mine, she waved at a woman walking her dog with a questioning look. After learning that Sophie was a lawyer, trying to protect Logan's grandson, the woman introduced herself. "My name is Maya. I've been Logan's neighbor for decades." She showed Sophie a photo taken just weeks before Logan died. In it, Draven Gamble was caught accepting a large sum of money from a group of imposing men, some with visible scars, their bearings suggesting a life in military or paramilitary organizations. The neighbor explained she had taken the photo by accident when she was trying to snap pictures of her garden. "I didn't think much of it at first," she said quietly, "but Logan warned me that Draven was up to no good. I was scared, so I hid the picture. But I can't let an innocent man go to prison. Not when Logan saved my son's life years ago by paying for his medical bills." Sophie listened intently, her mind racing. The pieces were coming together. The old mine, the arms deals, the threat to Logan, the attempt to frame David. Draven's operation was bigger than anyone suspected. The deeper Sophie dug, the more extensive Gamble's network seemed. Not only was he using the mine to store illegal arms, but evidence showed this had been going on for years. It explained how Draven Gamble had amassed so much power and wealth in the area. The horrifying revelation was that the weapons were often sold to conflict-ridden regions, fueling violence in impoverished countries across Africa and the Middle East. The mine was a covert hub for the deals. With each new discovery, Sophie felt more confident about David's innocence and more alarmed by the dangers swirling around them. Draven wouldn't hesitate to eliminate threats. Her phone rang. It was one of her contacts in law enforcement, confirming that the old mine had indeed been linked to suspicious trucking routes and shipping manifests. It was more than enough to launch a federal investigation. Knowing the importance of finding every shred of evidence, Sophie made another trek to the mine, this time with a determined plan. Rocky padded alongside, nose to the ground. They reached a dusty office area near the mine's entrance. On the wall hung a tattered painting featuring a scenic mountain range. Rocky sniffed and wagged his tail, pawing at it. Sophie raised an eyebrow. "What is it, boy?" she asked, gently lifting the painting off the wall. Behind it, she found a metal lockbox hidden in a shallow compartment. Carefully prying the lid open revealed an old cell phone. The screen was cracked, but still intact. Something told Sophie it belonged to Logan. Heart pounding, Sophie secured the phone and hurried away. Sophie and David stood together in a small evidence room, the phone connected to a laptop. They tried multiple passcodes, birthdays, addresses, random numbers. Nothing worked. Time ticked by, and David felt the specter of defeat looming. Then, on a hunch, Sophie typed in David's date of birth. Beep. The lock screen disappeared. A swirl of relief hit both of them so strongly that David nearly forgot to breathe. They navigated to a folder labeled Camera Auto Backup. What they found was a series of clips revealing Logan's final days. In them, Logan meticulously rigged a plan to blow up part of the mine, hoping to destroy Draven's hidden stockpiles and end the illegal arms dealings. Another file showed Draven confronting Logan, cutting short his plan and threatening him violently. The final recorded moment, partially corrupted, was Draven or one of his henchmen striking Logan down, followed by the muzzle of a gun pointed at the camera before static swallowed the scene. "That's it," Sophie whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "This proves Draven, not David, was behind Logan's death." David, hand shaking, gently tapped a photograph of Rocky in the phone's gallery. Rocky was there. Grandpa must have known the dog would try to lead someone to the truth. The momentum built swiftly. Word spread among those once associated with Draven that the case was unraveling. A former employee of Draven's, a man who owed Logan a life debt after an old car crash near the mine, agreed to testify. He met privately with Sophie and David. "I can't stay silent anymore," he confessed, voice tight with guilt. "Mr. Logan saved me, and I refused to repay him by letting his grandson rot in jail. Draven runs the arms business like a well-oiled machine, and he made sure every loose end was tied up. But now, I can't go on knowing an innocent man is about to be condemned." This new testimony aligned perfectly with the audio file, the images, and the phone's video evidence. With each statement, David felt the shackles of suspicion drop away. When the court reconvened, the atmosphere in the courtroom was different. No longer thick with hostility toward David, but charged with anticipation. Sophie presented the audio recording first, laying the foundation of the threat against Logan. Next came the photographs of Draven's clandestine dealings with the men by the mine. She then introduced the video footage from Logan's phone, showing Draven's attempt to sabotage Logan's plans to blow up the arms stash. Finally, Sophie called the former associate, who delivered a damning testimony. Yes, Draven orchestrated the murder, manipulated evidence, and set David up to take the fall. Throughout the proceedings, David sat quietly, Rocky at his feet. The judge permitted Rocky's presence as both a form of support for David and a living witness to the unfolding conspiracy. As the final piece of the puzzle, Sophie recounted how Rocky had found the memory card in David's coat, something that sparked the entire chain of revelations. Judge Hughes looked down from the bench, a powerful silence filling the courtroom. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented and corroborated by testimony, this court finds there is no foundation for the charge against David Wilcox. All accusations of murder are dismissed. A wave of relief coursed through David, so intense he nearly collapsed. Rocky barked, tail wagging happily. the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, we have witnessed enough evidence today to launch a thorough investigation into Draven Gamble. Authorities are hereby ordered to detain him for questioning in connection to illegal arms trafficking and the murder of Logan Wilcox. This court also recognizes the extraordinary actions of the German Shepherd Rocky, who, it appears, played a vital role in uncovering key evidence. Without Rocky's intervention, the truth might have remained buried. The gallery broke into applause, though tears shimmered in many eyes. The sense of justice was profound, and among the onlookers were journalists who realized this case extended beyond a local murder trial. It was the unraveling of a transnational arms ring. News soon reached the outside world. The weapons stored in the mine had been intended for militant groups across multiple conflict zones, perpetuating violence and instability. David's exoneration meant more than personal freedom. It hinted that others around the globe might be spared the ravages of illicit weapon deals. When David finally walked out of the courthouse, the bright sunlight nearly blinded him. Rocky trotted faithfully by his side, tail high. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but David felt strangely at peace. He crouched down to hug Rocky, whispering, "We did it, buddy. Grandpa would be proud of you." David drove the car with Rocky on the trail to the mine. He paused near an old sign that read, "Wilcox Mine, established 1911. Running his hand over the faded lettering, he closed his eyes and heard Logan's voice, an echo of the past, reminding him that family is the bedrock of a man's life. It was in that moment he understood that the inheritance his grandfather left wasn't just about land or wealth. It was about principles and courage, love and loyalty. Rocky gave a single bark, as if in agreement, and as the evening sun dipped behind the hills, David felt a new sense of calm, an unwavering resolve to guard everything Logan fought for, and to always keep Rocky at his side, the steadfast friend who had helped save his life in more ways than one. The story is told in Palisades, Los Angeles. Although the wildfire has passed, the scene is really scary. No different from the end of the world. Thank you for listening until now. Let us know which city you are listening to the story from. If you love the smart and loyal dog Rocky, hit the Nike button and subscribe to the channel now to spread the story to more people. Have a nice day.